look at trending legal headlines we're following. A federal appeals court has upheld the conviction and sentence for Dylann Roof, who murdered 9 people at a black church in Charleston, South Carolina in 2015. His attorneys argued Roof wasn't competent enough to stand trial and should have never been allowed to represent himself during the sentencing phase of his trial. But the 3-judge panel disagreed in a unanimous decision. Roof was the first person in the U.S. sentenced to death for a federal hate crime. Former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo granted clemency to 6 people, including the driver in the Brink's armored truck robbery, on his final day in office. Cuomo is facing backlash for commuting the life sentence of Brink's driver David Gilbert, a 76-year-old man who was convicted of murder and robbery in 1983. The governor's office says Gilbert made significant contributions to AIDS education, prevention programs, and various prison programs. The Rockland County, New York executive says Cuomo debased himself and the state of New York by focusing on the well-being of murderers instead of the victims. Cuomo officially left office at midnight Tuesday. Unvaccinated Delta Airlines employees will soon be forced to pay an additional $200 per month for the company's health care plan. This is one of several steps the airline is taking to limit its risk and surging COVID-19 cases. BNC's Ayanna Crystal is in Atlanta with those details.
Delta CEO says the average hospital stay for COVID-19 is costing them $50,000 per person. And right now, 75% of Delta's employees are vaccinated. So for those unvaccinated employees that will now be forced to pay that additional $200 in health insurance premiums, they hope that everyone will get vaccinated. As for new employees for Delta, they will be required to be vaccinated.
But mandating it, that's a hard word for me. I don't know.
With more companies pushing for their employees to be vaccinated, some people have mixed emotions about it. Dana Krishman is vaccinated but says the decision should ultimately be up to the individual.
I ultimately felt peer pressure by family, but I think if we're really trying to get people to take the vaccine, I think we have to address whatever the concerns are they have about it and understand what's preventing them.
President Joe Biden is calling for schools and businesses to require vaccination, especially as the Delta variant fuels an increase in hospitalizations. The FDA's full approval of the Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine this week is a key milestone that will help get more shots in arms. But in the black community, there is still hesitancy.
Within our community, the FDA isn't necessarily our end-all be-all. There has to be trust and there has to be a level of, dependency.
Right now, there are dozens of companies that require at least some of their employees to be vaccinated, like Walmart, Disney, and United Airlines.
You have the power to protect your communities and help end the pandemic through vaccination requirements.
But mandating the vaccine has some employees fearful of losing their job. Employees First labor law tells me employees have 2 exemptions if their employer requires the vaccine. Those exemptions are for medical and religious, which are hard to prove and win in court.
The burden of proof in cases like this is going to be exceedingly high because the court is weighing the public interests and the health and safety of the community versus an individual's rights. And in the cases that we prosecuted, the health and safety of the community, it appears we're going to win.
All U.S. military service members must get the COVID-19 vaccine, and the mandate does allow for religious or medical exemptions. But if they still have objections,
the individual will be offered a chance to sit down with a physician and have that physician communicate to them the risks that they're taking by continuing to not want to take the vaccine. They will also be offered a chance to sit down with their chain of command and their leadership to talk about the risks that their objection will impose on the unit and on the force and on their teammates.
The CDC says that unvaccinated people are 29 times more likely to be hospitalized, which is pushing these companies to mandate vaccines. Now, as for Chicago's mayor, she just announced today that all city employees will be required to be vaccinated by October. In Atlanta, Ayanna Crystal for BNC.
3 decades after being convicted of murder, a Tennessee man sits on death row. But now many of the jurors who sent him there are saying they may have gotten it wrong. Hear his story in our weekly death penalty series next.